So, yeah, my copy was mostly black composing the screen, and it looked great. It's awesome. Like, it's so unafraid to just be this completely dull and dark and dreary color palette the entire time. It just has no... it doesn't care what you think.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
I mean, I like it because when I think of, like, great artistic, surreal anime, I usually think of something bombastic, like Indiveva, that's, like, really, I don't know, like, high scale, high budget, crazy bullshit happening all over the place. It's not a genre that seems to me to be one to spawn something that's so understated and moody like this, but it did, and it's really good.
What movie are you talking about?
Yeah, I was gonna say we started off kind of in the middle of a conversation, but it's fine.
Well, because that's better than spending a minute being like, today we're talking about like the movie they already read in the title of the fucking episode. Like, come on, dude.
Angel's Egg, 1985, animation. Good.
Yes, Ryan can do the
normie.
normie stuff for the podcast, and I'll do the interesting bits.
Let me be a bit less normative.
The interesting bits of how your TV is dark.
Yeah, I mean, I do keep it pretty low because I like it like that.
I like it very bright.
Right.
I just hate it when like I'm playing something and then there's just a really bright part and like my eyes are burning and I can't even like look at the scene because it's so fucking like oppressively bright. And I'd rather kind of have to like look closely and make out the figures than have my shit blown out with brightness.
Right.
So
yeah. So
what did you guys think of Tenshi no Tamago?
Yeah, that guy. When I watched this, I wanted to I wanted to keep my phone off just to like really soak it in, you know, but I also wanted to take notes. So I decided the best thing to do would be to take my nearest PlayStation 2 manual with a notes section and write it in, and I'll keep that as a running gag.
Yeah.
So
I'll assemble my doctor's thesis through the amount of notes sections I've accumulated over time.
For this one, it's Guitar Hero 3, and I can't tell half the shit I wrote. Honestly, this is
nice.
So it didn't even work. Amazing.
Incredible. I want to start off by saying I don't think I got the movie. I don't think I understood most of what it was trying to say, but I really liked the art and the music and everything, but the story was completely lost on me.
Saying that it has a story, I think, is kind of...
Yeah, I have this sort of, like, normal look at things, I guess, normal view of it.
Yeah, he's the normie of the pod.
He's the
where
new
I expected
normie.
it to have like a 3-act structure and that kind of thing, but it's
a
lot more
ridiculous.
abstract.
I've been debating what I'm going to pick, but I need to pick something that just destroys Ryan's puny mind. By something he can just never understand.
Absolutely destroys it.
Just make me watch Inland Empire again.
I mean, that was a pretty good one. I probably should have saved that for the pod, to be honest, but regardless. Yeah, I'm not surprised that you don't feel like you understand it, because, one, you're the village idiot of the podcast.
I knew that was coming.
And two, I don't know, it's not that easy to understand. It's one of the harder to understand things we've covered. It might be the hardest to understand thing we've covered.
That's why I waited to pick it.
It's super not explicit about any of its themes except for maybe biblical stuff.
Yeah, maybe some biblical stuff is involved at some point.
Biblical stuff.
It's possible. Like when they quote Genesis and talk about the flooding of the earth.
I think it's actually pretty explicit. I just think like I guess there's a difference between being explicit and being accessible in a sense, because I feel like this film is pretty direct about what it means, but if you're not able to understand the thing that it's saying, then it's not that's not going to make much of a difference. because it goes pretty hard into the Noah's Ark allegory, and like that's a pretty big chunk of it. So,
but I think the great aspect about this movie is that you can it has a quality similar to The Lighthouse, where you can kind of interpret the message in several different ways, because the core film is sort of built around the idea of revelation, which is a universal concept that can be interpreted in many different ways. Like I read one postulation that the film was about like sexual awakening and the loss of innocence. And
yeah, because the main character, she's very small, but like her face looks like a tired 50-year-old woman.
Well, that's something I wanted to talk about. That's a concept in Japanese culture called the shoujo, which is like the idea of a little girl, kind of like how in Red Riding Hood, she wears a red hood to symbolize like virginity and innocence. Mm-hmm. That concept is similar in Japan. So when you deal with these ideas of innocence and even things like blind faith, I think choosing a shoujo to represent the main character is a smart choice. But to divert a little bit, I want to talk about the background of this film a little bit, because I don't know a whole lot, but I do know that it was one of those kind of two-man collaboration dealios, like Fantasia was with Walt Disney and Stokowski, or Kingdom Hearts was with Tetsuya Nomura and the Disney guy.
Bringing out Kingdom Hearts already.
It's, yeah.
Let's try and
That's
find a way
one
to
of
fit
them.
it
That
in
was
every
literally
movie.
an elevator pitch. Like,
yeah.
As much as I'm like kind of on Kingdom Hearts, it's still incredible to me that came out of an elevator pitch.
True. It's true.
But yeah, the director was Mamoru Oshii, who worked previously on Urusei Yatsura. I think I mentioned that last week, but it was a relatively popular anime in Japan at the time. I've seen a few episodes of it. It's all right. And the art director was Yoshitaka Amano, who at the time, I don't think he was brought in to work on Final Fantasy, but he is famous for working on that now. In fact, I should probably link. Here's a gallery of some of the artwork he did for Final Fantasy VI, because his art style, Oshii wanted to incorporate as much of it as possible, because Amano's art is very much unique, especially if you watch this film. It incorporates like both Western and Eastern designs in a sort of, well, his art for Final Fantasy is more of a light watercolor, whereas in the film it's much more dark and gritty. So a lot of time and money was spent to bringing these scenes, these images to light. And both Amano and Oshii contributed to the story in this case. Again, much like Fantasia. So,
and it's awesome because the aesthetic is like this completely indescribable but totally defined and consistent. Like, it doesn't feel like a hodgepodge of shit. It feels like very meticulously crafted. But we've got like neo-gothic Mad Max
biomechanical tanks,
space apocalypse kind of thing, which is like the coolest shit.
Yeah, there's the really mechanical designs, which kind of remind me of the cover of Final Fantasy VI with I don't even know what it is. It's like a weird building thing, but yeah, it like the weird thing that goes through that giant long thing that goes through the streets. It's all red, and it seems like kind of it's mostly mechanical, but it feels like there's some biological parts to it.
Oh yeah, really that's biomechanical.
Dude, I fucking love that. There's that shit running through the street, and it's just like that's it. You never find out what that thing is.
No,
what it's for, why that guy is there by it, if that's even related. Fuck you.
You don't know why he's standing on it. You don't know who the fishermen are. You don't know why they're trying to shoot their lines at the coelacanths for some reason.
Yeah.
And I don't know why this guy's a scythe for some reason. It's like a weird...
It's not a scythe, it's a cross.
Because it looks cool.
It was like a scythe and he was like death.
It was it was a cross.
Huh.
He has it because it looks cool. Come on. Man.
Yeah. Well, because I did a bit of reading on what is it? It's the Dog of Anime or something like that. There's a book written by Brian Rue, my bad. The Stray Dog of Anime, that's what it's called. And it's kind of I guess just like not a biography per se, but not necessarily a filmography either, but it sort of delves into the history behind Oshii and the development of a lot of his works out, not just Angel's Egg, but also like Ghost in the Shell, Twilight Q, things like that. And what was I saying? Oh yeah. Something interesting that I thought about this film was that before he started working on this film, he was struggling religiously with his beliefs in Christianity. And you can definitely see that if you actually watch the film. That struggle between, I guess, what would it be, faith and realism? I don't know. But just
like the material world.
Not necessarily the material world, but just the willingness to believe even if it's not true. Like blind faith, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Or if there's no reason to think it's true.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching it and I was thinking, oh, I get why Soy likes this, because this is probably the most explicitly and specifically anti-Christian thing I've ever seen. Because it's like, I mean, there's plenty of things that hate on religion and dogma and blind faith as in general, but this one, like, with specifically Christianity, really... it feels like there's a lot of bile in its gut for the religion of Christianity. I mean, that's at least what I thought.
At least for the bad parts, I think you can definitely interpret the ending of the film as sort of being a testament to true faith versus blind faith, and what was I trying to say? I'm losing my track already. This is great. But I guess you can view the two central characters, the girl and the guy, as being essentially two different parts of Oshii himself. The girl being the faithful Christian part, and the guy being the more realistic, down to earth. Well, not necessarily down to earth, but skeptic. I guess that's the word. Because throughout the whole film, the little girl believes that there is something inside this egg. If it's a dove or a bird of some variety, or could be something completely different, but she wants to hatch it and see what comes out, is a very clear allegory to the idea of blind faith.
Right.
Right.
To the point where the man even says, like, well, if you want to find out what's in it, you'll have to break it open, which he does by the end. And when she actually discovers that there was nothing in there all along, then she has this horrible realization that, yes, what she believed in wasn't necessarily true. And even after she pursues the man and falls into the ravine and drowns to death, you see those other eggs sort of rise to the surface, which I think gives way to the idea that perhaps through some sort of devotion, even flying through the face of truth, that devotion can be rewarded in some way, because you see the final shot of that weird eye thing with all the statues on it flying up to the sky, and you see her body is added as a statue holding an egg, and you see that he is standing on the ground, because you can almost say that it's like his Christian half is going to heaven, whereas the other part of him remains on earth.
Yeah, like that's like the second arc in a sense. Because, I mean, like the last shot of the film is like zooming out on the universe and it's capsized first arc.
I think it's I think it's supposed to be zooming out on like Earth or something, because the whole planet is flooding, and we see the fishermen who are fully immersed in the blind faith just standing there about to be drowned and not doing anything about it.
I kind of thought of it in a loose sense that, and she thought like her mom was inside the egg.
What the fuck?
No,
Oh, let him
hear me out.
talk. Let him
because the end where she is falling down into the river and she sees that reflection of herself, her older self. I figured that was some sort of like motherly figure.
Yeah, I guess.
And going down there and dying is kind of like an Asuka moment, I guess. Where she goes down there and she like reunites with her mom, and they're both in heaven.
With that visual metaphor, I think the thing that I would connect that with is back to the sexual awakening theory, because that theory claims that when that experience happens, that's essentially her maturing into an adult and fully losing that innocence that was initially lost by the smashing of the egg or the losing of virginity, and then fully lost when she proceeded into adult and became mature.
Yeah. I mean, I
released eggs.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of a bluntly crude bit of support for that for that argument, is that she's now an egg factory now that the seal has been broken.
Well, they didn't mention how the appearance of more eggs was factoring into that theory. So
yeah,
it was just me bluntly adding that in.
Right. I mean, I thought of it as like I don't know how to explain it. She's making a sacrifice in a sense because she's going down as a sort of hero, true believer in this faith, which is why the eggs pop up, because
she's a martyr.
And it's like the fact that story exists, even though the story is predicated on God existing and being relevant, it still makes people more likely to believe in it, even though it seems contradictory. It doesn't actually matter.
It reminds me a bit of a scene near the ending of I think it's the 6th Narnia book, or maybe it's the 5th. I don't remember the numbers. It's the Silver Chair, which is probably my favorite Narnia book. It's when the heroes, alongside their friend Puddleglum, the main characters, what is it, Jill and I don't know, this other kid. They're trying to find this princess who's been trapped underground, and they find this woman, the Lady of the Green Kirtle, and she is essentially hypnotizing them into believe that the world above Narnia doesn't exist, Aslan doesn't exist, and while they're being hypnotized, Puddleglum kind of has a speech where he says, essentially, you know what, even if Narnia isn't real, even if Aslan isn't real, it's fucking better than this underground shit.
So it's like the Plato cave myth thing.
Maybe a little bit. Actually, it might be, because the way that she hypnotizes them is that she sprinkles a magic powder into a nearby fireplace, which turns the flame green and causes shadows to dance on the wall.
Yeah, that sounds like the Plato shit. Because I was thinking of the Plato shit while I was watching with the fish shadows on the wall. And I don't know how different I assume there is more than one translation of this. I don't know how different the different translations are, but the one that I was watching had a really great, like, well written line where it was like, the fish aren't anywhere, but they keep chasing them. Like, I love that it's not that, the fish don't exist. It's like, no, you see them, but they aren't anywhere. There's not a location in which the fish actually is.
They're like in 4D.
It's like, it's such a
I think what
phrased line.
Yeah, I think
we're on a 2D plane. They're on a 3D plane. That's kind of how I thought of it.
Well, I think it's more playing into the dogma aspect of this film, where the fishermen are trying to hunt these fish, these shades, these shadows that probably don't even exist at all, and maybe only exist in their minds, which you might compare as, like I said, as a very to the dogmatic attitudes of the Roman Catholic Church in the Middle Ages, when those lovely crusades happened.
Yeah.
When essentially they're just trying to hunt down these fish, but it's all for naught.
Yeah.
Why coelacanths? That I never could figure out. Maybe it's because it's a really ancient fish.
I guess the genius of that bit of dialogue is that if you were to say, oh, it doesn't exist, then you'd be like, oh yeah, but why do I feel like it exists? It's like, let me get to the point by saying, yeah, you do feel like it exists, but unfortunately that projection of a fish is not materially substantiated anywhere. It only is
kind of like religion.
Dancing shadows on the wall. Yeah.
Something I was thinking of with the fishermen, which at first I interpreted as soldiers for some reason, is that they're really similar colors to the environment they're around. They really blend in well with it, and I was wondering if that had something to do with them thematically. Like,
well, yeah, because they're mundane
forever.
And they're insubstantial. They're just peasantry. Who needs
yes, they're not really thinking about what they're doing, so they might as well just be part of the background.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea is that the two main characters are like the people who have lost their faith, and they're handling their losing of their faith in different ways. One by doubling down on it, and the other by destroying it completely, or at least starting questioning their faith, I guess is what I mean.
Yeah.
The mundane peasantry have no part to play.
Right, and even I think that resonates with the fact that, a few times throughout the film they ask each other who they are, but they never answer that.
Yeah,
that's the first line in the movie. Who is that? And I think it's one of the last lines too. I think it is the last line.
Probably. There are very few lines of dialogue in this film.
Yeah, I'd
most of it
like
is visual storytelling, as you would with an artist leading as one of the main people trying to tell the story. Because there was like a quote-unquote proto-story that was essentially just a collection of themes and ideas that Amano and Oshii contributed towards the making of this film. Which coincidentally, after it released, Oshii had a long period where he couldn't get work after the release of this film.
Wow, it was fucked up, actually. Like, to just put out a fucking great film and then just... Or at
least in a directorial role, I should say.
Yeah. No one wants to touch you with a 10-foot... I mean, I guess that's par for the course, but...
I mean, cinematically, like, this is amazing art, but I think a lot of the shots are way too long for their own good.
No, you're wrong. And your taste is bad.
I know I am.
That scene where he's sitting at the fire is so fucking gorgeous and perfect.
It's literally like 3 minutes long.
It's awesome. Fuck you.
It's really
you suck.
Good.
I don't know. I just didn't like sitting there just staring at the same thing for a while.
Well, look, if you don't like that, fucking watch that one episode of Ava where it's literally 3 minutes of him holding. What's his name? Holding him in his hand for like 3 minutes.
Spoilers
and nothing's happening.
30-year-old anime, by the way. 30-year-old anime that like is the most culturally relevant ever made.
I mean, he's holding them in his hand. It's not like...
Yeah, no, you're right.
It's not too bad.
By the time Kaoru gets introduced... It
could be worse.
By the time Kaoru gets introduced, knowing the existence of Kaoru... Kaoru isn't around for long enough for there to be spoilers regarding Kaoru, so I guess it's fine.
We spoiled his appearance in End of Ava.
Yeah.
Yeah, so another thing I was thinking of was one of the comments on the YouTube video for this movie, which is literally the only way
there are a few.
There's a couple, but someone said it's like I don't remember what specific artist they said, but it's like an hour and a half long, like, moving painting, which I think is the best way to go into this movie, thinking of it, because, there's a lot... When you're looking at a painting, like an actual like, painted piece of art, it's very different from watching a movie, because it's just one singular thing that could have a lot of meaning put into it, or it could have none. And,
maybe to a casual like you. You have to split them up.
Not none.
You can't.
Actually,
that's just
hang on a sec. I need to, because on that note, Oshii. Where's this quote? Oshii, when he was talking about this film, he essentially said that during an interview, when he was asked like, "What's the meaning of this film?" he said, "I don't know why people always go to the director." But I think part of the meaning lies within the viewer, and not necessarily the director in most cases. I need to find the exact quote because he said it a lot better than
which is right there. True, and is a sign of a director who hasn't completely lost their fucking minds when they don't want to go off. Well, actually, it's about how communism is turning everyone into I can't finish this bit. Communism is turning everyone trans, and it's really scary. That's what the movie's about. So,
here we go.
Just making an ass of themselves on daytime television.
When it comes down to it, I think the director doesn't know everything about the movie. Everyone always thinks that if you want to know something, you talk to the director. I don't think that's true. I think the answer lies within every single viewer.
Well said.
Yeah. A lot better than my half remembering of it.
I mean, obviously me, who my opinion is always, I don't fuck the director. I don't give a shit what he thinks. Fuck him.
Yeah. Which is what we talked about.
Well, I mean,
we talked about the Lighthouse, yeah.
In the same way that, part of interpreting any piece of art as being subjective, as in lying in the viewer, you could say that about a film just as well as a piece of music or a painting or a video game, because you can acknowledge that there was artistic intent going in, that they had a very specific thing that they wanted to portray or an emotion they wanted to elicit, but your reaction to how that is portrayed or their intent is up to you, and the director can't control that.
Well, and I give credit to directors. I'll be like, oh yeah, I love Kubrick, but that's more of a matter of convenience than anything else. It's not that I think like all of the artistic value from Kubrick films singularly comes from him and is identical to his intent in every way. And
right.
It's a lot easier to feel that way with Kubrick because he rarely talked about his movies in public. But with idiot directors who always talk about it and have some dumb interpretation for all their films, you have to really just completely throw that shit in the garbage.
Aronofsky with
I mean, he's my first example. I mean, Aronofsky is too blunt and surface a lot of the time with his work, but
I only watched Mother. I don't know anything else about him, but
anyway, Angel's Egg is great. It's awesome.
It is great. I'm going to read another Oshii quote really quick. All religions start in pessimism and end in optimism. I admit I am a religious type, but I do not believe in any specific religion.
All right, well, as long as he doesn't turn it into a Life of Pi thing where he's like, actually, I'm all of them at the same time. I'm multi-classing religions.
I'm sorry, what?
Do you not know about Life of Pi?
I saw it once, like 10 years ago, and never thought about it
again.
Well,
it's not that he's all of the religions, but he claims to be like 3 highly conflicting religions all at the same time, and that's like his character. He's like Christian, Buddhist, and Muslim, I think, are the 3. And he just doesn't, he has no argument for the conflict between those religions. He's just like, nope, it's fine.
Buddhism is even more opposed to Christianity.
I mean,
Buddhism is the one
Buddhism is the one I'm least sure about. I don't remember the trio, but I'm pretty sure, I'm like 90% sure it's Christianity, Islam, and like one other thing.
Because Buddhism is all about the path towards ultimate self-reliance, whereas Christianity and Islam is about total reliance.
Right. So yeah, it's...
What the fuck?
Life of Pi is a story about not asking questions. Like more than religious fiction generally is. Like the entire point of that story is don't ask questions.
Wasn't there a point where they got onto a plant island that tried to eat him?
Well, the entire point of the story is that it gets to the end, and it's the framing is that he's telling a reporter that all this ridiculous bullshit happened, and the reporter's like, yeah, but is that really what happened? What really happened? And he's like, or maybe I just, everyone around me died and I did nothing and got rescued. Which one do you want to believe? And it's like, the one that happened. I'm a journalist. It's my job to report the one that happened, you stupid fuck. Can you stop waxing poetic about how you believe in 3 religions at the same time, you fucking worthless piece of garbage? Just tell me what happened.
So in a way, it's almost like an interesting perversion of how you could describe the quote-unquote plot in Angel's Egg. In a strange way. Where,
I guess you could. Sure.
Where instead of... Where the focus isn't necessarily on asking the question itself, but more wanting a direct result. Because, look, I get it. You're into your flowery storytelling. I want to know what the fuck happened. Well, and I need to get paid.
If I'm in the position of the journalist, right, and he tells me that ridiculous, fantastical story, and he's like, yep, that's what happened, and he's just that's fine. I'll take that because then I'll just write about how you had like a psychotic break or something. What bugs me is that you're gonna say, which one do you want? Like you're trying to teach me a lesson. Like, bitch, I'm on the clock here. Like, stop trying to pretend that you learned something about the world by getting trapped on a boat. Like, that's the first time that's ever fucking happened to anyone. Get out of here with this bullshit. I really hate this story if it's not clear. I have a lot of bile in my gut for Life of Pi.
I see. I couldn't tell.
I wanted to read the summary that was in the description of the movie, the copy that I watched anyway, because I kind of found it really interesting. The plot for Tenchi no Tamago is not something that can easily be relayed in words. The film is largely about the presentation more than action, and understatement instead of open revelation. Existentialism abounds, heightened by the moody artwork and the dialogue, which asks more questions than it answers. Bear in mind, however, that the conflict in the plot line primarily occurs in the audience's mind, not in any sequence of actions in the film, spurred by speculation arising from one jarring impression after another. Which I think was a really well put way of describing the movie.
I mean, yeah, but like that's surrealism, generally.
I mean, it offers an insight to it, but it doesn't really offer anything else. Because I mean, you can't really necessarily pen down. I mean, you can write down what happens in the film, but it doesn't.
I think it helped me.
It's not as easily transcribable as a 3-act plot with like character arcs and development.
And that helped. I was thinking of it because it helped me a lot in appreciating the movie more than just
because someone told you
the undertones.
Was because someone told you to appreciate it that way.
The fact that it was surrealism, you weren't already in that headspace by default. That's what I don't get.
I didn't know it was surrealism. I didn't know anything about
it.
We
talked about it being. I'm gonna drop.
But even not knowing the direct definition of the term, but understanding the term surreal, meaning dreamlike or ephemeral, like at least being able to glean that from the imagery, like I feel.
I guess I need to remember that this is once again this is the 6 out of 10 Mulholland Drive guy speaking, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised. One point of contention.
I don't know what you want me to say. Like, I went into the movie only seeing the one screenshot of her after that wind got blown in her face. That was all I knew. Or all I remembered.
One point of contention I want to raise.
It's more just that simple description was enough to push you over the line. I'm not mad at you. I'm just perplexed.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you're not using all your brain. You have potential, but you just need to apply yourself. Man.
Let me mail you those pills from
I'm your
thanks,
teacher.
Mr. Hall.
Limitless.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mrs. Godfrey.
What I was going to say is that you see the action of the guy breaking the egg. The guy who kept reminding me of the dude from Eve for some reason. I guess because he's bumming around with a little girl he doesn't know.
Fucking Gary.
Fucking gray hair and shit. God.
But we see that sort of action in his arms, but we never see... We don't see the actual egg. Yeah, we don't see the egg or its contents until presumably hours after the fact when the girl wakes up. So it's like, I guess it could have been empty. It's
also possible.
Like dragonflies in there or some bullshit.
It's also possible that he might have taken whatever was in the egg with him or cleaned it up or something. Yeah, or maybe it was empty. Or maybe it's a different egg and he just took the actual egg.
Yeah,
and he smashed a different egg.
He said, "Keep precious things inside you, or you'll lose them." So, yeah, that might lend credence to that.
Well, I mean, I don't think he was intending to break the egg that early on. I think it was a decision he sort of... I think after seeing the skeletal remains of the bird was probably the tipping, pivotal moment.
Oh yeah, he was like, I
one possible theory that I kind of resonate with is that the guy in the film is actually Noah, and when he tells the story of like sending the dove out and having it come back and then sending it out again and having it not return and and it being so long that he doesn't remember, and then seeing that dove, that skeleton, I think might have triggered his memory, and then which caused him to smash the egg because he realized, well, it's too late for me.
I thought of it as he he like saw that, and like Dunk said, he's trying to double down on not believing in his religion. So to the point where when he's confronted with like evidence of it, then he destroys it so that it's even in his mind it's not there anymore.
I wouldn't really say it that way. I think probably what it would be is, first off, I would smash the egg. For the record, I am on the smashing the egg team of the two of them, mostly because we're talking about a god, hypothetically, that just decided to ethnically cleanse most of living creatures because he didn't like their behaviors.
It's not just ethnic cleansing, it's genocide of all living things.
Massive scale genocide. Worse
of
than
all
any
life on the planet.
Inconceivably large genocide, yeah.
That included things that were not even capable of sin.
And it's like, even if you're one of the people that makes it on the boat, if I made it on the boat, I would be like, wow, what a fucking piece of shit that would do that. And it's like, so for him to basically be like, all right, now, like he abuses the all life and then kicks it in the corner of the chamber tied to the chain to the bedpost or whatever, and then he throws an egg in the corner with it, and it's like, now take care of that fucking egg, you piece of shit, and then leaves for like years. And it's like, how about fuck you? And it just
that's certainly one way of looking at it. I was thinking of it as a more Christian way, where he's like, where the god is I suppose testing their faithfulness, and also it's like what is it called when Jesus comes again and he's going to kill everyone, but everyone's going to go to heaven.
The rapture.
The second
rapture.
coming?
I figured it was something like that.
Yeah, he's just going to come down and fucking cut all their heads off. That's what's going to happen.
That would be sick, actually. Regardless. Yeah, it...
So you know what happens in the actual ending to Noah's Ark?
No.
Either of you?
Nope.
I didn't read the Bible.
I never played that Wolfenstein mod.
I did watch some Bible.
I thought you were going to bring up Bible Adventures.
I never played that either, but I figured the Wolfenstein mod was a better version of that game.
Wolfenstein mod? What do you mean? That's a whole complete game on its own.
You're right. I'm sorry.
Thank you. So after 40 days and 40 nights, basically Noah sends out some birds. First it was a raven, then it was a dove, but both of them come back, not finding anything. But then he sends out the dove a second time, and the dove comes back with an olive branch, which I think is meant to be the root of, like, the dove bearing peace symbology, or at least one of the origins of it. But the world was flooded for 40 days and 40 nights. The ark settles down on what the fuck mountain is it? But it's out in Saudi Arabia somewhere. And Noah and all the animals come down. They descend from the ark, and God's like, "Hey Noah, you mind building me an altar?" Why? Just cause. So he builds him an altar. He says, "Hey, can you take that lion and like cut its throat on the altar?" Noah's like, "That's kind of fucked up." Okay, I'll do it. And he does it, and then he burns the corpse as the first corporeal sacrifice to God. And then God's like, "Yeah, now you guys can eat animal flesh and stuff. That's pretty cool, right?" Because before that, humans were mostly eating plants and fruits.
What the fuck happened to God during this time period that he's just like, oh, fuck it. There's too much shit going on. We need to start trimming down.
This is like a shitty
That's why I
God
say
demanding sacrifices and shit.
Well, that's why I subscribe to the Gnostic idea that the Old Testament God and the New Testament God are different beings, because it is a fucking shift.
Yeah, it seems like it.
It is, in many ways, a complete and total reversal.
Obviously, to God, he's just playing The Sims with free will set to high. Or to low, I guess, depending on your interpretation of existence. But regardless, it's like he was going for a trophy in The Sims, and then he realized that he accidentally locked himself out of it early on, and so now we're just his personal sadistic, like that kid in Toy Story, this little sadistic petri dish.
Yeah, he forgot to quick save before doing all this.
Right, exactly. love how this movie starts and it's like instantly the most 2001 shit ever. Like it's like it's like the second shot is basically like a reptilian version of the space fetus from 2001.
Yeah,
being
I
sort
couldn't
of
tell
suspended.
if I got the right version of it because my version of it just started with just the little like baby hand.
No, that's
I'm
how it
pretty sure
starts.
that's correct. Yeah,
Yeah,
this
no,
thing-
and
how it
I didn't know
starts.
that, so I was looking for like one with like production logos in the beginning and shit. But no, it just starts right off like that. And,
it just starts with some Shinji hand motions,
yeah.
and then
a side thing
Uh-huh.
about that. There's two moments where this film jump scared me. One was that moment with the hand cracking at the end of that shot, and the moment where the girl finds the egg broken and she just screams in agony after a moment of silence.
she's really
Scared the shit
upset.
out of me.
Well, yeah, that's
She was really upset. I could tell.
well, yeah.
I would
She
be
She really
too.
wanted that egg.
Well, the interesting thing about the girl character is that it's clear that her like entire identity is based around raising this egg. Like, it in a sense, it's more than just blind faith. It's like coming out of an existential crisis with blind faith and having that be your only crutch for everything. And so then once it's gone, it's like, well, fuck me. I guess
Well,
we're
it's
calling
like
it quits.
Yeah.
Well,
It
it's
kind of
like-
lends to my
it's like
motherly
Father
theory
Grigori
where
from
she has
Half-Life
to-
2.
Yeah.
where she has to take care of the egg as its sort of mom. And even when she has it like under her dress, you could say it looks a little bit like she has like a baby bump.
Okay, that's
I don't know
clearly
why.
the intent. Don't act
Yeah,
like that's
that-
like some sort of like.
What since when do you care about Earth's intent?
Well, it's just not insightful of you to be like, oh, it looks like she's pregnant, kind of. Haha. It's like,
No, that's
okay,
just
come
my
on.
observation.
Constipation. That's
was
some
thinking
pretty
of.
serious constipation to cause a fucking baby bump.
Yeah, yeah.
And plus, with the symbology of the egg representing, like, you know, life that has not come into being yet. I mean, even Japanese mythology, one theory for the creation of the earth was that order and chaos are kind of this unending primordial soup contained within this cosmic egg that eventually kind of hatched and the forces disseminated.
That's a pretty apt and observational tale.
Yeah, I like that.
I'd say that's probably like closer to some universal truth than a lot of creation myths are.
Yeah,
I
my
forgot
favorite.
what it's called, but it
Favorite
is
parts of
pretty interesting to
mythology.
read through. It's similar to like how the Vedas describe the universe as being this thing that existed before observable minds actually looked at it as this thing that was kind of in a symbiotic order and chaotic state,
Mhm.
but we don't know what it is because we didn't look, because it wasn't, that universe stopped existing when people started observing it. Like, that universe died and another one was
Yeah,
kind of made.
right.
Interesting. Never heard of that.
It's, you know,
You should read the Vedas.
physics.
Yeah, the Vedas predicted quantum mechanics, and collapsing wave functions.
I mean, I was thinking for the beginning that it was that my interpretation was gonna be primarily anti-natalist, but I didn't feel like there was ultimately a lot outside of the very obvious surface level symbolism that really supported that theory. I was thinking it was gonna be something like the egg was the, I don't know, creation of life or something, because I think you could make a good case that a lot of our meaning as humans comes from shitting out more humans. Like, it's like the idea of, but there will be more of us in the future, and that somehow equals meaning. Like 2 times 0 equals 2 or something. So, that's that's me
I think
bringing
it's-
my personal ideas to the table. It doesn't really
I
support
think-
it by anything.
I think in that case, what the idea that bringing more humans will equate to value is that something that will impact humans at a certain point, like let's say the creation of fire,
Mhm.
is only important because that was passed down through time, and more humans were able to carry that invention throughout time and use it and improve upon it and use it to create more things.
Yeah, but it's, I mean, I would argue that that's argued from the perspective, whether conscious or not, not the vast majority of time, but that eventually humans sort of transcending previous generations and accomplishing things that other previous generations would never have conceived of will eventually somehow lead to a sense of meaning, which I would argue is not achievable. It's like an asymptote, probably, where we'll keep edging up against it, but we'll never actually cross that binary threshold.
Right. Humans are 1/X.
Another little specific thing I was thinking of was why the girl was so obsessed with these water bottles, and why she had so many of them in her house or wherever she lived.
Yeah, I thought a lot about
arc.
that in the first half, but they kind of
the reasoning for it was
subsided as prevalent symbols in the second half. So
I was thinking it had something to do with like their egg shaped, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I think it has
galaxy brain opinion there. That's really
reason for
I
it.
think
Yeah.
I think it has more to do with the Noah's Ark analogy and the idea, like the imagery of a bottle being filled up with water is something that's repeated at the end of the film when you see the rains come and the city is flooded and you see the fishermen get fully submerged. I think that's the importance of the symbolism.
Yeah.
I mean, I like at the beginning where it's like she has it full of water, but it's like perfectly clear water, it seems like it's like she's drinking a bottle of nothing, which is cool, because then when she has water in it again, it looks like a mana potion instead. It's like something has changed. The water has been corrupted, polluted by shitty fishermen or something.
Yeah.
And then there's that part where she comes back.
It's also probably just gothic plumbing where it's
True,
coming out of
yeah.
fucking gargoyle mouths.
If that moment
lead
in the
pipes.
beginning where something in the woods or like just wind or something like flows in her face and has that really amazing shot of her with her really, really well animated strands of hair just going up. I'm wondering if like something big changed there for some reason.
Yeah, speaking of Evangelion, holy shit, Lilith is just this kid grown up 100%. It's insane.
Yeah.
Like, if you told me Ano hadn't watched this, I would be very surprised to hear that. He must have watched this.
Yeah, I mean, I had my timeline fucked up. For some reason, I was thinking that came out like nearly at the same time, but no, it was 10 years after. The last decade. Just gone.
Well, and then there's that part where she comes back and it's a health potion. And she's like, oh, fuck this. And then she just dumps it out.
Well, it's red. The fuck's in there?
Well, she's doing a no items run, and she's not a casual, so just dump that shit out.
Yeah.
So
no
what
Estes.
about the strawberry preserves then that she eats?
Well, it's a survival game, so you have to eat food, but no healing items.
So it's not like
It's only
tail.
essential.
Food doesn't restore health.
It's not the Tales of games where you have apple jellies and such.
I haven't played those games, but yeah, no.
Well, I know apple jelly is the main healing item, or one of the main healing items. It's like the potion from Final Fantasy. It's ubiquitous.
Right.
I thought that was like the cutest shot in the movie was when she was just taking fucking fingerfuls of jam or whatever, and that was like the only thing she ate.
I guess that was
she's-
kind of
she's-
cute. Cute
she's
is
certainly
really the
not
word
gonna-
that comes to mind.
Yeah, there's not a lot of cute in this movie.
No,
That's why it stood out.
there's a lot of starkness.
Mhm.
Yeah. Seems like
A lot of all-encompassing bleakness.
a very old, dark, sad world with a little girl with like a little bit of hope and like light in her. I don't know.
Well,
This
it's
is
like
why-
that trope. It's like that trope in indie games that you always hear about, where it's the small, big-headed child exploring a desolate world. You could say it
Limbo,
draws
Inside.
Bastion
others.
to a certain extent.
Yeah.
I only ever played Limbo. I haven't played any other games that meet that criteria.
I didn't play either. Did I play? I played Inside. Yeah. That was alright.
Most of the time, the kids are usually mute because
Mhm.
it adds to the impressionism.
And I was
Yeah.
figuring, I was actually told, I told a friend I was watching this movie, and he was like, can I say something about it? I'm like, sure, go ahead. And he said, well, one, there's no dialogue in the movie, and 2,
Not true.
I think
Objectively false.
He heard it from a third party or something.
It's so great when people
Is
do
that
it's
Kane
also
the boss
about
who
the Bible.
told you?
It's like a retelling of the Bible or something. I was like, okay, interesting. So that's what I was going into it.
Was it Kane the boss? Let's roast Kane the boss.
It was not Kane the boss. It was my friend
damn.
Justin.
Okay, well, while we're talking about him, Kane the boss has like the worst takes in the world, and he sucks. He's got some great videos on YouTube. Yeah, he's got some great videos, but
great videos, good music.
His takes are incredibly, shockingly awful. It's just like an endless pool of shitty takes. You can just keep pulling new ones out.
Check out his new / week old single "Blowing Up" out now on the Kane the Boss.
Nice. Now you're just shilling.
Oh yeah.
Now the shilling has begun.
Scorched Earth Policy out May 1st.
The original context of the shill was that it was a kind of simpleton that the snake oil salesman would hire to show that his product would work. Fun fact.
This you know what this also kept making me think of was Mother 3. Have you played more Mother 3 yet, Si?
No, but I think I might see what you mean.
Knowing the general story beats of Mother 3, I can see where you get that.
Well, I mean, in some ways less substantial than others. The lizard egg kept making me think of the dino from the beginning. That's not really the most substantial connection. Really, it's
got
kind of
dinos in it.
It's the kind of ambiguously terrifying machinery that kind of populates the... I won't say any more because I know you haven't played the game yet, but...
Yeah.
Can I just rant for a second on how the fact that people think that dinosaurs were accounted in the Bible?
Oh yeah, that's a good
9 more
one.
minutes to fill. Go ahead.
I'm not going to go too terribly long on it, but basically in a few sections of the Bible, primarily Job, which is a fun book to read, by the way.
Yeah, I love the fucking story of Job.
Which is, there are a few different types of beasts, and even in some other sections, like in Proverbs, there are mythical beasts that are accounted to be like impossibly large, like the behemoth comes from the Bible. Mm-hmm. The Leviathan comes from the Bible. These like impossibly large monsters that some people think were supposed to be dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what? If people discovered an ancient dinosaur skeleton and thought, hey, that's a giant monster, fair enough. But implying that the two existed at the same time is madness.
Yeah, the idea that like
there could be an argument.
We would find the fossils of one that have like no evidence of ever interacting with the other species. Like one was carefully wiped off of the earth, and the other one was just carelessly left underneath pounds of soil. It's a great argument. Truly
awesome.
When I was a kid, I thought fossil fuels meant they literally took fossils and like broke them up.
I wish they did. I feel like that might be a more efficient method of powering stuff.
And I was like, oh, that's so sad. But the dinosaurs, though. If
you could use the full fossil instead of just like the fucking pittance of fuel you get, that would probably be a more efficient method of...
Now I'm imagining like there's some sort of subsect of like a kind of privateer that big oil companies will hire to like infiltrate museums and steal dinosaur bones and just fucking put them in a giant like cartoon machine that grinds them up and dispenses petroleum at the other side.
That's a great idea for a game premise, I think.
That sounds really great. That's a good heist movie.
Just in a weird...
Gotta grind these dinosaur bones into Marmite.
It's just a weird, like, anti-world where things don't make any... They're like, adjacent to things that make sense, but they aren't things that make
everything
sense.
is, like, super literal in that sense.
Amelia Bedelia.
Well, you could do that a few times, but I was thinking it wouldn't be that simple. Like, there wouldn't be a coherent rule of the universe. There would just be a bunch of, like, bizarre, atypical situations that are part of the world building. I've been inside for so long. Like
it's like week 3, right? 3? I think it's 4.
I have seen more people walking outside ever since they put out an order in my state to stay inside than I ever did the past month.
People don't like being told what to do. It's kind of a bad strategy, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, because it's like we've we're so concerned about people's freedom that we're not going to enforce martial law, which is a good thing. Don't get me wrong, but we've decided not to enforce martial law, and then really we're expecting that to be a good solution, is to just be like, can you guys please just come on? Can you just?
Me. Me and Tristan were watching Mr. Robot the other night. We finished season 3, and he saw the bits of the soldiers walking around the subway and being like, reminder, curfew starts at 9 p.m. and goes until 4 a.m. And he was like, this is what's going to happen in 2 weeks, and it's going to be the worst. This is the dystopian future we live in. And I mean,
it'll never be as bad as fishermen throwing long spears at giant seal cans.
Well, because that would be cool. Yeah. That would be too cool. It's going to be
fine with
really,
like, my window being broken if it was for that reason.
It's going to be like a mundane dystopia where it's like it's not even interesting to look at or be in. It's just going to be fucking tedious suffering, which is already what we live in, but sad. Worse, exponentially worse, tedious suffering.
Like I said, it's a JPEG.
Yeah, for sure. I had something I was going to say, then we got way off track and I forgot it. So
I wanted to bring it back to dinosaurs. Because I remembered as a kid I had this giant, like, fucking, like, 3 foot by, like, 2 foot fucking, at least that's what it felt like, dinosaur book. It was like a huge fucking book filled with dinosaur facts and shit. And I was wondering I wonder if they still make those kind of books, because I want one now.
What a fucking awesome point to bring up, dude. Really, really good stuff. No, I remember what I was going to say. It was that there's literally a Bill Hicks bit where the premise is how ridiculous it would be if dinosaurs existed during the events of the Bible, where it's like, and no one brought it up. Like and it's a version of, I don't know, it has like Jesus riding around in a T-Rex or something. Bill Hicks is like, it's all in the execution. If you say a Bill Hicks bit in the abstract, it's not funny, but it's because he sounds like he's completely lost his mind and he's like preaching to an audience of other insane people. That's when it becomes funny.
Is nowadays, because you can't just like have good, well-written jokes. You gotta be a lot more performative.
I mean, that's how stand-up's traditionally always been.
Yeah, I mean the people that actually write good jokes are never the most popular comedians. They're kind of like the comedians in a sense. But even then, it's like, even if you have good jokes, you still have to perform them well. Or, I mean, Mitch Hedberg has great jokes, but if his delivery wasn't as good,
yeah. My favorite stand-ups are pretty basic. I like John Mulaney and Bill Burr. And
wow, that's true casual.
It is,
casual hour.
But I haven't gotten too much.
Could be worse, though.
At least I'm not like when I was 12 and I watched Dane Cook for the first time, and I was like, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
I mean, Dane Cook is probably underrated because it's like the people that hate on Dane Cook so hard are the same people who are like, I don't know, who probably really like
abortion.
Nice.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that even means, to be honest. Is he like a right-wing comedian or something?
Dane Cook
I don't know.
About abortion.
I'm trying to think of like a really kind of like mundane comedian. Maybe like Whitney Cummings or something.
Carlos Mencia.
No, Mencia is uniquely terrible. He's a special kind of garbage. I mean, Nick Mullen isn't even that great at stand-up. He's better at podcasting than at stand-up, really.
Stavros is more stand-up.
Stav is great at stand-up.
Yeah.
This is a great podcast that everyone's going to enjoy.
This is the shill where we tell you to go listen to Come Town, the better podcast.
You mean the podcast that's already making $50,000 a month on Patreon and we have 20 subscribers?
Yeah, why haven't we started a Patreon for this?
Because no one would sub to it and it would be sad. But yes, I would like to start.
Well, that's what they thought when they started their Patreon. Look where they're at now.
They immediately had success. So it's not... Because they were already like not moderately successful, but it's like people knew who they were locally when they started that podcast.
I found the name of that creation myth I was talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Nihongi, one of 2 official records detailing the ancient history of Japan. In the beginning of the world of old, heaven and earth were not yet separated. They formed a chaotic mass like an egg, which was of mostly obscurely defined limits and contained germs.
I like that definition at the beginning of the universe.
I think it's an apt description, especially when we're talking about Angel's Egg, because a lot of the scenery is very kind of, what's the word, liminal? very sort of transitory. It's this.
Right.
It's evocative, yet it's bleak, and I don't want to say bland, but just it doesn't pop necessarily in terms of color, but it's insanely intricate in its drawing and its design, which I think I said at the beginning is kind of almost in the face of Amano's Final Fantasy artwork, which if you look in the gallery link that I provided, it's a lot of watercolory type stuff, and it's more an emphasis on like lighter lines and watercolors and things of that nature than what it looks like in this film, which I think is interesting. I wonder if there was some sort of artistic revelation that Amano went through after this film, or between the points when he started working on Final Fantasy and this.
I wish Final Fantasy was darker on average. Maybe it doesn't have to be SMT dark, but like maybe some sort of middle ground between the two.
There should be some nice. Like more bleak, sad Final Fantasies.
I don't know.
I was going to bring something up, but I forgot. We're good at podcasting.
I think it's hilarious that Kingdom Hearts 2, the beginning is like, has incredibly dark implications for the universe, and then it's just, we just kind of ignore it and go on a wacky adventure.
Yeah, we literally, right after all that shit about Roxas, just go straight to Sora with Donald and Goofy, and they're dancing around making funny faces.
Well, even more in 370 million days, or whatever the dumb shit is called. It's like we strongly imply, days. If not outright state, that that there's an entire like universe of living sentient beings that are just like constantly being wiped out and like destroyed in service of other beings that we've declared more important, and it's just no one cares about that. It's just like, whatever, we're just gonna move right along. Me
your next movie is 365 out of 2 days.
Oh no. I just want to try to bring up as many disparate topics as possible, so that everyone in the audience gets alienated, so that everyone has their turn to where we're talking about something that they don't know about, and then it's just a pointless podcast for nobody. That's the goal. That's what I'm trying to build here.
Good.
I see. Good.
It's kind of like the movie Cube. See, there's another reference to something totally unrelated. So that's another person we can cross off the list who hasn't seen Cube. Soy hasn't even seen Cube. Nope. He's seen Cube from 2006. There's another one.
Yeah, and I've seen the Cube. Time Cube's not a movie, is it? Did someone make a movie about Time Cube?
So I figured it was a movie.
Is it a conspiracy crossover theory between Jean-Claude Van Damme, Time Cop, and the movie Cube? There's another reference again. Here we go. Just keep on narrowing it with a nail file. The amount of people who will understand what the fuck we're talking about.
Up until we get to like the inside joke .mp4 that we share around with like 2 people.
Yeah.
That's so inside that I don't even think...
That one rocks.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
And yeah, we claim to be better than Family Guy, even though we're literally just doing Family Guy right now.
I was going to bring up my own interesting experiences with Christianity, but if you guys want to keep talking about this...
No. That's better. Do it. Do the better thing.
I like direction.
So I was raised as, I guess what I would call a non-committal Christian, because there's a lot of different sects of, like the Roman Catholic Church that kind of split off from, because first the major schism was the Roman Catholic Church and Eastern Orthodox, and then from Roman Catholicism there was Protestantism, and then from there there's like the Anglican Church, and then from there you have like the Puritans and the Quakers, and it's just so many fucking different interpretations of this one singular simple idea. And what that basically means is that when I was a kid, we just went to whatever church was closest to our house.
Right.
If it was we didn't care if it was a Methodist church, we didn't care if it was a Lutheran church, didn't matter, we were going there. And for the most part, from what I understand, the differences between a lot of these sects is for the most part minimal. Like, I think the Methodists, whenever they do baptism, they don't like dip you in the water, they just sprinkle a little bit of water on your forehead, and things like that. Or like whenever you do communion, you dip the wafer in the wine and then eat it rather than doing it separately. But I was brought up as a Christian, and for the longest, and I even went to like Christian private school when I was in middle school, which I guess was kind of the start of my disillusionment with it. Was that I think I mentioned this before, but not on the podcast. But we had the first class of the day for those 3 years was religion class, and calling it religion class was a pretty big stretch. Because only the first day of religion class did we actually bring up other religions, such as Islam, Buddhism,
Jesus.
Taoism, and other such things. Because I remember the textbook too, it brought them up in such a limp-wristed way that it was just like, here's these other religions, but we're going to talk about this one. It's like, okay, but are we going to talk about anything interesting about it and allow for self-introspection? No.
Well, because then you might like it.
Yeah.
Well, it's about a message and broadcasting that message, and rather than taking that message and internalizing it and allowing it to guide you through your life, people have just perturbed that idea of eternal forgiveness through belief, and they've turned it to the point where now we're just going to start killing people over it because we believe that we're going to call God Allah, but no, you should call God this. Well, we also believe that we should call God Yahweh. Well, we're also going to hate you too. For literally no reason.
And then people ask me, well, how can you think all religion is bad when we go to the food bank sometimes every couple of months? And it's like...
Because it's a Cantonistic function. Are you guys familiar with Cantonism? Dunk probably is.
No, but I feel like I'm going to like this term once I learn what it is.
No, I am
well, it doesn't have to do with religion specifically, but it has to do with the idea that altruism doesn't exist. It's not an idea that can exist in reality, because no matter the exchange, even if it's something that's done wholly out of goodness, there's still a transaction. Because let's say, I don't know, you save a cat from a tree, and you go, and the person's like, oh, thank you, what can I do for you? And they're like, I don't need anything, citizen, and then you go away. The transaction there is fame. It's recognition. It's praise.
Yeah.
Or even if it's just an ego boost for the self, it's still a transaction.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good way to phrase it. I've thought that for a long time, but that's a good way to. It's a good word for it. Although, like, I thought that for a long time, but yet if you had asked me if altruism does exist before, like, during the last week, I swear to God, during the last week, I've decided that I no longer believe in morality.
Yeah, you had that
like a
that
moment
one
Took
where
it
post.
that long?
Well, yeah, because it's like it was, yeah, there's still a right and a wrong, but it's just more and more complicated, ever increasing in complexity, situational reasoning, this and this, and it gets to a point where it's like, but we are so incapable of ever comprehending this theoretical.
Well, it's because
where you have enough understanding to actually determine something like that. I don't think there's any reason to think it's actually a real thing at all.
Yeah.
I
When you put it
tend to-
under like a big enough microscope, it just becomes a big gray area. Yeah.
Well, I tend to think of it more as a fractal image, in that it's essentially, when you look at it broad scopes, you can perceive the image, but if you try to zoom further in and further in, you see the same image repeated and spiraling inwards towards itself, not really achieving any sort of... There's no real end point. There's no finale. There is no start. There is no end. It's just that.
Yeah.
Just because I guess I somehow got even more nihilistic and pessimistic about the human race, if that was even possible. But somehow that got worse and stronger. So now I don't
That
even...
has something to do with current events.
Maybe. Probably.
Possibly. Maybe. I don't know.
I mean,
I don't think the
with...
pandemic would be the thing that would push Dunk over the edge.
No, but it is pretty wonderfully illustrative of some glaring systemic flaws. The most interesting one is the ventilator shortage.
Flaws.
How it's basically, we contracted a company to make smaller, cheaper, more easily distributed ventilators then the company got bought by a bigger company that already made ventilators, and so they just canceled the contract. And it's like, it's literally the government going, please, Mr. Markets, can you please give us a better system for healthcare technology so less people die? And then the market was like, not
or like,
right now.
Or like how or like how those engineers in Italy managed to manufacture, I think it was a part of a ventilator by like 3D printing it for $2, and then a company that makes ventilators, or it was some piece of medical equipment, a company that makes that equipment, basically like filed for some sort of like patent suit or copyright claim.
God, I swear to God, patents and copyright are going to be directly lead to our death as a species. Oh, yeah. It's going to be some like long-winded chain reaction of, no, you're not allowed to make the cure for cancer. We fucking trademarked it, you piece of shit.
Well, it's almost going to be like a World War I of ideas, where someone's going to make something and it's going to trigger this long chain reaction of claiming an idea, when in essence you can't really claim ownership of an idea.
And you've never been able to. It's just been like a performative consolidation of power by people with power the entire time. That's all. Whoever has the more expensive lawyer is going to win the intellectual property case.
The only thing you can really own is like the distribution of it, and even then, that's pretty loose in a sense.
I mean, I stand that
that is still easily exploitable.
I claim that there's no time where you could actually legally claim plagiarism that wouldn't exclude some potentially genius artistic expression, because it's like it would have to be identical in every sense to the other work, which is impossible to do, because that would also mean it would have to come out at exactly the same time, under the exact same circumstances, be released in the exact same way. If any of those things are different,
and
you now have a fundamentally different work.
Yeah.
So it's like...
and all that, and not to mention our unemployment rate is higher than the Great Depression, I think. It's at like 13% or something.
You know what I think is Amazon started the virus. Because, man, Amazon is going to become our fucking technocratic overlords after this. They're still hiring. Oh, yeah. People go on strike for working conditions and catching coronavirus in the warehouses. They just fire the guys who go on strike immediately, and then they're hiring the millions of people who lost their fucking jobs because of the virus. And it doesn't even, like, there's no shortage of people who need work, so it's fine. Just fire all the dissenters and just send out the drones to deliver everyone's groceries. Are you
trying to block out the truth?
Because we can't end it yet, because I still have to say the movie.
Well,
so it's up to me when I finish my rant about coronavirus. Only then will we be able to end.
I think it was the Papers, Please music.
Oh, yeah.
I see. I also didn't finish my talk about Christianity and such.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was going to say something about that, but you go ahead.
Yeah, like I said, the beginning of the disillusionment was essentially in 6th grade, when, we're just only going to talk about Christianity and such, and not talk about other religions. And I never ended up really paying much attention during those classes, other than, of course, doing it for a grade, just doing the bare minimum that was required, which was an attitude that was commonly shared amongst most of my peers. Then for the longest time, I didn't even really think about it that much. It wasn't until like kind of college, when I was at a low point, when I started to think about those questions again, and the question of God was brought up back again in my life, because there were some moments of prayer where I was like, oh, please, can I get a good grade on this fucking thing, or something like that. And I think what helped me out there is something that I can relate to this film, where I wasn't necessarily being religious in a sense. I wasn't going to church. I wasn't praying every day. I wasn't observing the Christian faith. But through that kind of hope, I imagine that it was certainly a propellant that was inspiring me to continue forward. Even if it isn't true, even if it's false, it still helped me. which I think is supposed to be the ultimate goal of Christianity, is a kind of self-help that will eventually realize in eternal life and paradise, and helping, and especially too helping other people who haven't seen that along the way, which I think is something that you can relate to Angel's Egg, because there are points where the girl's like, "Oh, I can hear breathing inside the egg. I can hear the wings flapping," and it's.
Yeah.
I guess you have to ask yourself in that question, in that essence, is she trying to convince the older guy, or is she also trying to convince herself as well?
I think it's both.
Probably both. Yeah.
Probably.
She's
trying to convince the egg.
It's the valuation of practicality over like a pure absolute truth value, which, to be honest, makes a lot of sense to me at this point. I mean, when I was more of a fedora atheist, I would be like, that's stupid. The truth is all that matters, milady. But, like, I mean, it makes sense to me now, because my current life philosophy is that the root of all misery comes from the fact that we're self-aware. And if we weren't self-aware, if we were just dumb apes, we would be, like, yucking it up and having a great time.
So, like,
yeah, essentially.
I had a similar experience in my life with Christianity, where it started out and we were even more non-committal Christians, where we barely ever went to church. It was just like the concept of Christianity was just the most like general sort of life thing. And I did go to a private Christian school for like 2 years. Like my first 2 years of school were in a private school, and all I really remember from that was we watched like Bible cartoons and stuff, and that was pretty
hell
fun.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
similarly, Dingo Pictures Nativity Story probably.
I mean,
I didn't
that's
really
how
question like the concept of religion or anything, because it wasn't that big of a thing. But yeah, I think since I was like in middle school, I've just been agnostic, and there have been times where I just for myself, just kind of like pray, just in a general sense, I guess, or meditate. I don't know, just to help me get through shit. But
most families are pretty non-committal in that sense, in terms of just not really showing up to church, which isn't to say a bad thing, but well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. You go for Christmas and Easter, and that's it, you know, and maybe a few other times throughout the year. For us, it was more depending on where we lived, because we moved a few times in my hometown, and it was just usually whichever church was the closest. But we still went every Sunday, but at the end of the day, it didn't really affect my religious output on life. And in the fucking Bible, Jesus even says that you don't have to go to church to pray. You don't have to go to church to observe the Christian religion. It's all in here. I'm pointing to my heart when I say this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Much like art, the question of God has to be answered by you and no one else.
Mm-hmm.
Faith is what happens when you fill the void of understanding with belief.
Well, that old Pascal thing, where it's like Pascal's dilemma, I think, where it's like, well, if you believe in God, then you're good, but if you don't, then you have nothing to gain, and then you go to hell. And it's like, well, yeah, but supposedly Jesus already took care of that shit, so I should be able to do whatever I want, technically.
He did. He did.
And then just chill out and drink Slurpees when I die, regardless. So I used to think that was heaven, was you get a Slurpee machine. That was the main... I wonder if the
New Testament and the Old Testament could be considered like maybe different timelines of the same story. I think it was, you said the Old Testament, where Jesus dies for our sins specifically.
Yeah, the Old Testament. Care about shit. The Old Testament is where he stays adult Link, and then the New Testament is where he stays. Yeah, I haven't played Zelda. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Ocarina of Time.
You're thinking of at the end of Ocarina of Time, when Zelda sends him back in time to be a kid to fill in those missing years, which is fucking retarded, by the way.
That's incredibly stupid. If I've already had to deal with this bullshit, I don't want to be straight Shota anymore. I'm done.
But anyway, Ryan, that couldn't be any more wrong what you just said.
Nice. Get his ass.
There are many points throughout the Bible which explicitly reference that a savior is coming,
Yeah,
which
well,
is pointed
like I said,
to Jesus.
never read it.
You should.
I also haven't read it, but I think it's probably pretty sick and metal. So I should. The Old Testament, especially, is probably super metal.
There are some good
from
parts.
Like a fairy tale angle, I could probably enjoy it.
Well, I think, like
more
most
than I
Christians, you should treat it as allegorical and not as like an actual historical document. Even the New Testament, for the most part, because even though we know that Jesus existed, we have like census records from 4 BC of him being born and shit like that.
I'm more interested in the rest of the census records from 4 BC, to be honest, just to get a good look at the squad in 4 BC who was bumming around.
Well, maybe you should talk to Pontius Pilate. He was the governor of Cyrenia.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll hit him up in the DM, see what's going on.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Could talk
I'm going to be reading it from the perspective of the narrativization of death metal album covers. Is what I'm looking for specifically.
Yeah. This is the new direction of Celluloid Goblins. Is we do book clubs, and it's just the Bible is the only book.
Well, there are several books. There are several
podcast.
books within the Bible, so you could talk about those. I wouldn't be opposed to talking about more religious texts. Those are always fun.
We did say we were going to do the Quran on the first episode, but we never did.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, because we were talking about Stalker, and...
oh, yes, of course. What an easy thread to trace.
Well, and the bit was, we'll do the Quran next week, and then we didn't do it. Because it's not... It turns out there isn't a movie. I thought there was, but... Yeah.
The Quran movie? Oh, yeah.
There should be, like, religious text adaptation. I think that would be cool.
Yeah.
Because there's that's just the nativity story, and it's like, no, but I want the whole shit. New Amazon Prime miniseries, the whole fucking Bible. And...
I had a children's version of the Bible that was, like... It had, like, animated... Well, not animated, but it had, like, drawings and shit of most of the stuff that happens in the Old Testament and the New Testament stuff. It was pretty good. It had pictures of demons being exorcised when people sneezed.
Hell yes.
Which, by the way, is why people say bless you.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow.
I hate that because I don't...
new from you every time we record.
It's almost like he's the smart one of the podcast or something.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say it.
He is, though. Because the reason I'm so insistent on calling Ryan an idiot is because I'm also an idiot. So I have to constantly emphasize
You're projecting.
So it's like really, Soy is like way at the top, and then there's a long stretch, and there's me, and then Ryan is like slightly beneath me, so I like overemphasize that slight discrepancy to compensate for the fact that I'm still like 36 echelons beneath Soy in the intelligence.
I was thinking of it more as the podcast is a milkshake, and it's a 2-to-1 ratio. We're the milk, and he's the ice cream. We're the
this is why you're beneath me. This is what I'm talking about.
I don't understand that analogy. What?
It's just ratios,
man.
Pretty.
I see.
It's just ratios, man, he says. Like, that's an explanation.
2-to-1.
It's just ratios, bro. Man, my energy drink is like 36-2 right now, for sure, man. It's crazy. It's just ratios,
The Angel's
brother.
Egg, I give it an 8.
I give it a 9-36.
Yeah. 9-36 is good. I'll use that.
I'd give it a 9, probably. It's pretty good.
Big fat goose egg, That's what I'd say if I was a YouTube reviewer. That'd be my joke review.
Yeah, I was thinking of doing like a really hack joke review where it's like, this egg should have been aborted, even though that's in the movie. So it's like an extra hack review. It's from a guy who didn't even watch it. He just got bored 10 minutes in and decided to record his.
We need to get our pal Paisano 181 to review this movie. I think he'd like it. Oh wait, hold on. I think that's him right now. Hold on. Here.
Oh shit, do we have him? He's in the call. Oh my god.
Hey, how you boys doing?
What's up, Paisano? How's the
GTA 4 Let's Play?
It's going pretty good. I'm having a little bit of trouble. There's some stuff I want to record with some of the side activities, but I'm not too sure if those will get actually put into the final Let's Play because they're a little mundane. If I'm being perfectly honest, I did see Angel's Egg. I appreciated the surrealist visuals on top of Yoshitaka Amano's amazing artwork. which I think was at his peak when he was doing the artwork for Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VII is a piece of garbage. Don't talk to me. Overrated piece of shit. Played it at my buddy Mickey's house while well, I probably shouldn't say that in front of a microphone.
Some bold statements coming from Paisano here.
Game took fucking 6 discs, and it was this. Fucking shit. I want to see if the remake fixes that. Is it going to be 6 fucking downloads? Get out of here.
It might as well be with 100 gigabytes it's going to cost you.
Well, yeah, it's episodic, so I guess it could be 6 fucking downloads.
Yeah.
Fucking shit.
The video game industry, unfortunately, has not changed much, Paisano.
What a pile of garbage.
It's a sad story.
You know, I was a little boy when E.T. came out. Thought it was the shit. Couldn't get out of the holes, though.
Still an incredibly underrated classic.
Oh, is that an impression of me? You think that's funny? That's
I think
right.
it's just that you're funny, Paisano.
I think I gotta go now. I'll see you later.
Alright.
Wow, that was... He talked for a long time.
I think we should invite him on. I think he should be a permanent member of the podcast.
Okay. Yeah, he's not around too much. He only comes around whenever I have to pay him. I mean, when we hang out.
Yeah.
You pay him to pretend to be into JRPGs for the bit.
How did you meet that guy?
It's protection funny. Well, it's a funny story. I mean, I haven't been in DC for too long. I've been here for like a few months. And we met at a coffee shop, or as he calls it, a coffee shop. And I saw he was emulating Earthbound. And he was doing some grinding for the Sword of Kings. And I offered him some grinding tips because he was kind of doing it unoptimally. So I walked over and I told him, if you actually do the edge technique where you walk towards the edge of the spawn of where the Starmen... I think it's the Deluxe Starman, I'm not entirely sure, but if you walk towards the edge and go back and forth, you can trigger the spawns of more than one. And if you equip the Defense Shower, that also helps greatly, and he appreciated that, and we started talking about Mother 2, and talked a bit about Mother 1, and we went on a long, lengthy discussion of JRPGs, and then we exchanged information.
Is it true, the rumors I've heard of he's planning his Kingdom Hearts 1 LP?
Is he gonna get?
I don't know where you heard that. I don't know where you heard I don't know where you heard that rumor, but maybe he's not really one to talk about that kind of thing. So
I have some
sounds like it's some.
with that guy.
He's never talked about you.
My new favorite shit is.
I think.
Yeah, but did you get 99 coconuts and 99 pretty stones?
I think there's a leak. Should probably talk to him about that.
Yeah, I read about him on WikiLeaks. He's like a wanted man or some shit.
Yeah, Snowden posted
true.
some shit about...
That's not true. Cut that out.
About,
Stop joking.
About his salami containing the meat of witnesses that mysteriously disappeared during the trial.
Well, now that's just silly. That's almost cartoonish. You wouldn't put it in salami anyway.
What am I, Sweeney Todd over here? What is this shit?
He's not going to appreciate it when he hears that impersonation of you and when he listens to this episode. I'm serious.
I will appreciate it, and that's all that matters.
Dude, I love when like the best stuff we do on this podcast is so far into an episode that no one is listening to it. There's no way anyone made it through us talking about fucking whatever bullshit we talked about. Time Cube.
Wasn't there a bit about dinosaurs being grinded in Marmite?
Yeah. There's no way anyone made it this far to the real pinnacle of probably the podcast as a whole. I doubt it's going to get better.
I'm glad that we finally have some actually good bits that I can put up.
Yeah. The reason you haven't been cutting out the bits is because there aren't any, not because you're fucking lazy.
Not
and
because
can barely
I'm
get the episodes up on time.
Terribly lazy.
Yeah.
Skim through the podcast.
I say judging you while contributing nothing to the process.
Maybe I could hook you up with Paisano's sort of on and off editor, Jimmy the Fist 21. What?
Yeah, when he's
why that was so funny to me.
That's his name.
When he's doing, a perfect run of Persona 5 on Merciless, he's got to put out a lot of episodes in a short period of time, and he needs a really good, competent editor.
I mean, he calls him the Fist because first off, he has kind of swollen hands. He had a horrible incident involving a swarm of bees and wasps and hornets.
Bees and wasps and hornets in the same swarm, hanging out in the same hive. They just decided to team up against him.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't the same hive. They were all conveniently placed around the same dilapidated house. But what had happened? What had happened was that Paisano and Jimmy were messing around the house when they were kids, but the house came down and they all started attacking Jimmy and Paisano, but Jimmy came out with some more permanent injuries than Paisano did.
Oh, no.
And also because whenever he edits, Paisano says he looks like a caveman punching a keyboard, but the videos he edits are apparently really good, so maybe it's a new editing style that I'm in love with.
It's an artistic evolution of LP editing. It's reaching new heights.
Who knows? But yeah, Angel's Egg. It's good. Should
It's
probably
good.
end this now.
Very good.
We've gone for an hour and 30.
Overall, Celluloid Goblins rating is like an 8.5.
No, I'm pretty sure Soy gave it more than an 8, and I gave it a 9,
Yeah,
so I think
I
that
gave it a
average is
9.
higher than that.
Good. What's your movie, Don?
6.66. I've thrown a bunch of stuff back and forth in my head, and I still haven't completely decided, but I guess I'm just going to pick whatever one the spinner has landed on when I get to the end of this sentence. Let's go with It's Such a Beautiful Day by Don Hertzfeldt from 2012. Neither of you guys have seen that, right?
Nope.
Let me...
Cool.
I'm like 80% sure I haven't.
It is a collection of 3 connected short films he'd previously made.
Oh,
so
I
it's
saw
like
this on your letterbox.
they're the same story, but it was released over a period of time.
I'm looking at the art and I'm thinking, is this Yahtzee Croshaw?
Thankfully, it's much better than Yahtzee Croshaw.
Hey!
As Brian is aware, it is my second favorite film of all time on Letterboxd, right behind whatever Kubrick film I'm currently shilling the most.
Wait,
yes. Yes, it's on. Look at my fucking Letterboxd top 4, you idiot.
Huh.
And I guess I just felt like it was time for another top 10 pick for me, so.
Yeah, that's where I'm going with my picks, too.
And I'm not going to tell you anything about it, because it's better if you don't know anything. But yes, the one I'm talking about is all 3 short films combined, so it should be an hour long. If you get one that's shorter, then fix that.
It's like the Marvelous Adventures of Winnie the Pooh.
I'm liking this animation binge we're going on. Let's see if I have any good.
Part of the reason I was reluctant to pick it is I didn't want to steal Soy's little... But it's still not really his niche, because it's a recent animated movie, and it's like...
yeah, I mean, it's not just specific... It's not just animated films.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not so much a niche as it is a... What would be bigger than a niche? Just a whole chunk.
Style?
A chunk.
Yeah, chunk.
Yeah.
Chunk is good.
A crumb. Man,
Have fun editing my audio.
Like 3D graphics, man.
All right,
this one, Ryan, where I've got shit playing in the background all the time.
I'm gonna hit stop.
That's a good
pretty
idea.
soon.
It's Such a Beautiful Day. Next week, watch it.
Watch it and stopping.